Hi, you're in my living room. We are in my living room with Sam Bird here, joining in. It's possible he'll disturb the video if he's... That's okay. If he starts shrieking, I'll have to quit and we'll start over. What do you think? Are you going to start shrieking? Or are you just going to chit-chat with me? Hello, Sam. Say hello to my friends. Sam here is an African gray parrot. He was wild caught in 1982 as an adult, so he's at least 40 years old. We really don't know his age. How old are you? He doesn't know because parrots don't give a damn about math, so he hasn't been counting. I wanted to talk to you about sound and stress. I have to worry about stress in my life. It's been a significant, It's been a significant force in my life, being stressed out. I'm just shifting him so you can see him when I'm sitting relaxed, because I think he's entertaining. Stress has been an issue in my life. I was having panic attacks already before puberty. I struggled with insomnia as a child. I have struggled with stress management all of my life. And there was a point when I actually got, see, he likes to talk along. There was a point when I actually got a stress management education. It helped immensely. I learned, for instance, that, I learned how to manage the things that create stress, how to recognize what creates stress in you, and to, that you ameliorate secondary stressors, and then the primary stressors you can't fix become easier to tolerate. So, for instance, if you have a squeaky hinge, just putting a little oil on that hinge could actually help you cope with your upcoming exam. Because the irritation of the squeaky hinge is an added stressor you have control over. And stress is like, it's like you have a capacity, and when it overtops, one little drop is enough to throw you out of kilter. But if you keep the level down, then you can pour in a whole gallon and still handle it. And, when you've had a stressful childhood, you will generally wind up going into life with a fuller bucket than other people. And if your bucket starts to get low, you will think in your mind that you don't have enough in your bucket. You need to ramp up your stress. And the way people phrase it when they're doing it to themselves is, I feel like I'm not alert enough. Something bad might happen. I need to stay on my game. I need to be on top of things. I need to be aware. I need to be alert. I need to be ready to go. And in some cases, it leads to the point of what we call hypervigilance, where a person is constantly on edge. And they feel that if they stop being on edge at any point, then they will suddenly become vulnerable, and or something may happen. And in fact, it's that very thought that ramps the adrenaline back up. And mine, in fact, has just gone up because I do struggle with this. And it's a lifelong struggle, because even after you've conquered it, like alcoholism and smoking and eating disorders, it will sneak back the next time difficult times come your way. And certainly for a lot of people, this coronavirus and the stress of it is going to have that effect. But I've noticed something else. I've noticed for myself that my stress management has gotten significantly easier since the coronavirus lockdown. And I know why. It's something that I've noticed, because I know that when I'm in the country, not on a windy day, wind will do this to me worse than the city does. The buffeting. Sound waves. Okay, sound is created by a physical event in the air, where air molecules are being pushed one after another, like cars in a chain reaction bumper, back, what do you call that when someone hits you from behind? Well, anyways, it's like you're having a chain reaction where the guy in the back went bump and the entire line of cars all the way up to the stoplight got hit. And then the stoplight feels the force of the accident at the other end. And sound is doing that across the air that you cannot see, feel, hear, or taste, and yet do see, feel, hear, and taste, but take for granted as part of your atmosphere. This air has physicality. And the sound, in fact, what you're listening to right now, is the movement of the air caused by the speaker in your device. you see. And my microphone wobbled in sympathy with the noise waves coming out of my mouth that are moving on the air towards the camera. Okay, so most of you probably know how sound works, but I don't take people's education for granted, and it's much easier to understand what I'm talking about if you understand what a sound wave is. Because as you understand that the sound wave is impacting things, right? It's not just impacting the air or your eardrums. Do you understand? The very same sound waves that are entering your ears are hitting your whole entire body. So when you get into, and that's why they've created the decibel rating system, because it's a numeric way of determining how much force the sound in any given location has, how much physical force. So those sound waves travel through things. As you know, you can hear through the wall. That just might make the dogs bark. Sure did. No. So the sound waves can travel through solid objects, and they can travel through liquid objects, and they can travel through semi-liquid objects, and they can travel through your flesh, is my point. I mean, different materials and densities and responses create, you can block sound. And in fact, I'm willing to bet that your flesh is a pretty good blocker of sound, because it would not vibrate tautly or evenly. It would be a sluggish responder. And as the sound wave goes from your skin through your different densities of tissue, it's going to lose a lot of its force. However, the point remains that sound is having a force on your internal organs, and you felt it in your lungs when you've walked into a nightclub or a concert with a really loud bass. I know you felt it. There's maybe some of you who have managed to avoid that experience, but you can actually feel it in your lungs. You can feel it pushing the air out of your lungs. You have to breathe harder against it. Come on up, Renee. Come on. Oh, you need help? Oh. That Renee. So proud of how she's growing up. Real confident. So those sound waves are hitting your physical organs. They're hitting your brain or your brain cells. They're hitting every cell of your body and every part of your body. And so they're not only a psychological effect, is my point. The stress of excess sound is not purely psychological, because it's not only coming in by your ears. It's literally physically stressing your body. Kind of like having a hyperactive toddler who won't stop pushing on you. You learn to tune it out and you kind of ignore it, but it's still causing you to fill your bucket. It's still putting drips into your bucket, of your stress bucket. I mean, really, I cannot. I can't hold my hand here properly. It's really, really awkwardly uncomfortable. Anyways, my point being that really loud noise stresses your body physically as well as your mind, perhaps. Even when it doesn't bother your mind, it can still be causing you stress. It can be increasing your stress levels. And since the coronavirus lockdown, the city has gotten noticeably quieter. And I am noticing it in myself, in my lifestyle, and in my body. I no longer feel the need to have something playing on the radio or the television or MP3s 24/7, almost 24/7. I would let it, after it lulls me to sleep, I turn it off, kind of thing. And I really rather not. So I always try to go without, and then when my irritation, like, I can feel it in me like a vibration. When the vibration gets too high, I turn on music and it helps. And I know instinctively and I know subconsciously, even though I have no data proof, that it's the random noises around me. It's the white noise of my environment that's making me need a non-white noise to cover it, to counter it, to dull the roar. I wonder sometimes if I was living on a starship, would I be unable to live on a starship? But since the likelihood of me ever going to space is zero, no matter how much I might wish I could go to space, I'll have to die and transport myself there in non-corporeal form. Because ain't nobody on this planet putting this old rotten body up there. No matter how much I cried. So, I suppose a starship might have same issues. So it might be something that we need to study as a race, as part of going forward in the future. What effect does a constant dull roar of noise do to us physiologically? It seems to me that I would rather hear sudden, loud, staccato noises from humans being happy than shrieking tires above a constant roaring din of engines and mufflers and people who want to be heard above the noise, so they amp up their mufflers and, backup beeps and machine. It's so quiet. I can hear my washing machine. I used to think it was the fridge and the freezer that were mainly to blame, and then when they were off, I'd be like, no, it still feels noisy in here. Why is it always noisy in my house? And it's really only been about the last 20 years since this city doubled in size. It didn't used to be this bad here. I used to enjoy this city a lot more. It was a lot quieter. Now I actually kind of feel like I like it here. Noise levels. We need to start caring about noise levels. We used to. I remember cartoons and movies where it was kind of it was used as a plot hook or a story device. The law about being quiet around hospitals. You were supposed to maintain a quiet zone around the hospital because it was understood that patients needed peace and quiet to get better. But when's the last time you've seen peace and quiet in a hospital? And I'm not talking about an overwhelmed hospital. I'm talking about an ordinary one, with the millions and millions of hums and beeps and whispers and whooshes and shushes and people crying and people coughing. And you can't open the windows anymore. The noise outside the windows is actually less of an issue, although I wonder, is it? Because, I've got double-paned windows, and when they're locked and closed, they're airtight. And yet, the noise of the city still travels through the wooden walls and the wood and the insulation and the glass and the everything. And it still intrudes upon my interior space enough that I feel the difference. Just that little bit of stress, just the sound noise stress taken out of my experience. And after 2 weeks of it, I'm beginning to feel more human than I've felt in a long time. And nothing else in my life has changed. Really. Possibly you could argue that the psychological release of permission to do what I've always done and not feel guilty about it because everyone else is doing it, that has some effect. But that would be offset by my concern for people. My concern for my own well-being if I fall ill while this is going on and have to deal with the hospitals, and my concern for all of you and all of the people that I care about and the ones that are being careless out there that I care about. If I know about someone, I care about them, and even if I've decided that I do not like them and that I'm angry with them and that they have hurt me and that I never want to have anything to do with them, I don't stop caring about them anyway. That's what empathy is. That's why Buddha talked about compassion being important and compassion being a natural facility. I don't know if compassion's something that only some of us have. I really don't know how that works. You have to get to know so many people, and you'd have to get past the lying side of them into the part where they're real before you'd even find out if their compassion is real. And ain't nobody gonna admit to not having any. Not once they reach the age of 20 and have been told how evil that is. But it's probably not evil. It's probably just a nuisance, not an evil. I'll tell you what is evil, though. all this noise. Now we have an opportunity to do something about all this noise, you see. I'm covering my head because I'm feeling self-conscious about how high my forehead is. Now that I'm in transition and I'm growing out my bangs, everybody can see it. I've always worn bangs because it's always been this way. And I'm going to be bald one day, and I know it. Now that I'm taking testosterone, it's inevitable that I will lose my hair. And as you can see, I'm a hair freak, so covering my head because I'm looking at the damn camera. I should be looking at the lens, not the screen. That's the screen, and that's the lens, and that's the screen, and that's the lens, and that's where I'm supposed to look. I hope you're enjoying this rant because it's the laziest one I've ever done, but it's about probably the most important topic ever, and that is sound waves and sound amelioration and sound limits. I don't like solving problems with a law, so I'm not going to say sound bylaws. We used to have them and they seem to have vanished. I have no idea what happened. As I was saying, there was a time when there was a law against disturbing the peace, when there were noise laws, when it was understood that there were only certain times when you could do the necessary noisy stuff like hammering and slamming and sawing. And somehow that got thrown out the window. There still seems to be some kind of a 9 p.m. or 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. limit on industrial noise. I mean, the cement factory near our place shuts down. Oh, it's been so quiet since they went on slow. I mean, I don't for a minute think that the cement factory's literally shut down. Maybe I should check into it. Maybe that's why it's so quiet. But point being, we used to be a lot more picky about what parts of the city were allowed to be noisy. And, I mean, that was one of the reasons this was the bad side of town, because a lot of the industry was allowed to be over here because those poor folks couldn't afford to commute to the industrial part of town. But I think now that all of us poor folks have a car or three, and or that you can set up a transit for us, that they really oughta, I don't know, subsidize these businesses to help them move to an industrial park and get the hell away from the residential areas. Like, there should be a park buffer zone or something between the noisy industries and the peaceful bedroom parts of a city, don't you think? Don't you think that a hospital should not have busy city streets? We should shut down that big old hospital on the hill that's 100 years old and build a really nice new one to replace it in the middle of a residential area. Oh yeah, I'm serious. Right at a residential area, yes, ambulances. It should have its emergency ward department lined up with the entry to the neighborhood so that the ambulances can turn off their sirens as they arrive. And it will not be significantly louder for the people living behind it. So you've got, you know what I mean? That's the problem. We can't afford to relocate everything and redesign a city. But we should be trying to move things. We should be moving hospitals out of the core. We should be moving industrial out of the neighborhoods. I don't care if you want to put it in the core or you want to put it out here. I'm not sure what the core is for. I think the core is supposed to be for entertainment district. That's where you put your nightclubs. That's where you put your restaurants. That's where you put your, I don't know. I guess the office buildings, offices like to be up there, and they help support the nightclubs and restaurants, don't they? So that's where you're going to have all your, that stuff. So your hospital shouldn't be anywhere near that. They should be near the residentials. The other hospital's doing fine. It is between it is actually like a buffer. There's the downtown core, and then there's a park, and then there's a hospital, and then there's a residential area, and that is doing it right. Whereas here we've got just the weirdest mishmash mix of busy and quiet and noisy and industrial and people needing peace. It's just all mixed up. But that hospital's disgusting. If the coronavirus doesn't break it, I will be amazed. It's the only one that's a religious hospital in this city. But the noise there gets through the walls. It's just not. is not a healing place. Our hospitals are not currently healing places. We don't build in the hospital for sound. I mean, I remember sitting there in the recovery ward after my most recent surgery, and every single time they came through, those blasted doors squealed as they opened and closed. Like, what on earth were they thinking level of squealing? I swear that must have been 90 decibels every single time. Shock you right out of your rest. Why aren't we designing for sound? Why aren't we designing our cities for sound? Why aren't we designing our homes for sound? Why aren't we designing our machines for sound? Why are we not designing for sound? And I'd like you to challenge any sound designers, any people you know who work with sound, to go out there and start examining this problem, please. Because I'm not the only one who's being bathed in sound waves and having my cup filled, my stress bucket filled, unnecessarily by something I'm unable to control, the noise of my neighbors.